do advertising in different ways. So it's the nature of the internet growing, and that's what we always kind of say. It's nobody's fault. It's just sort of the complexity of the internet and the way that we deliver content. The challenge with that is that it actually can impede business objectives. So what we see, not just with media customers, but really any of our customers, we work across e-commerce and retail and travel and finance and sort of any industry that has sites where they care about optimization we work with. And we see that all this activity actually introduces higher latency. So you're dependent on outside resources to do things on your page, and therefore, if they slow your page down, you have no control over that. In media in particular, we see broken tracking. So you're asking lots of disparate code to all interact together. And sometimes it doesn't work very well. So in that case, even if you deliver the page, you deliver the ad, it's viewable, you may still not get credit for it because the trackers don't fire for one reason or another. Then we also see things like malicious extensions and sort of other malicious activities. So the obvious one that I mentioned is sort of ad blockers. Those, you have no control over that. That's actually on the user's browser, but it has a direct impact on the delivery of your content and the way that you can monetize your site. And so I think the thing I'm calling out here is that these problems exist in media, and we see that all the time. I'll talk about sort of how we assess that, but then also they exist with really any other sort of site on the web at this point because of the nature of development. And that's because all pages, no matter what your business, really have these fundamental components. And so there's still this first-party content, so the things that you control. There's the third-party content, which we see more and more of. And then we actually think of ads as a little different because that's third-party, and then you're calling for an ad. But then those ads come with fourth-party activity as well. So all of that has to interact well together. And a lot of times we have media customers that come to us and say, oh, we want to make our ads faster. And our answer to that is actually that you can't make your ads faster just focusing on the ads, because it's this holistic picture of the site and its delivery that matters if you're going to try and smooth that critical path. So what we did as an example is took we have an analyzer internally that we use to look at sort of the profile of different sites. So we ran it against a large kind of global news site and picked this one because this is actually fairly typical of what we see in media. And the thing I'm going to point out here is that this bar is showing the load of the page to the point of an event called onload, which is an event that a lot of media companies use to sort of say enough of the site is loaded that now we're ready to start showing ads. And there could be other events that you key off of instead. But the point here is that in order to get to unload, it took 17 seconds and 98 tags to fire before you were even in a position to show an ad. And 81 of those 98 tags were third party, which means as a publisher, this publisher had no control over what was going on with all those tags. So that becomes a real challenge in terms of the ability to manage a site. And I think what we're finding is that this isn't going to go away, especially as the cloud continues to become more important. There are more links out to other technologies. So instead of hoping you can kind of rein it back in, you can kind of accept this as the nature of the internet as we go forward and the nature of sort of delivery of content. And instead, you have to start thinking about ways that we can control it. And so this sort of example is a first step in that, where we'll actually break down all of the different resources that are firing, how long they take, but we actually go one step further when we think about sort of optimizing advertising and say, well, of all of those, which ones actually interfere with the delivery of an ad? Which ones of those are critical in terms of the ad delivery path? So that's the kind of stuff that we don't think, we think there's been analysis on specific things like, say, header bidding or ad serving, but not really analysis at the holistic level of sort of how are all these assets on the page working together. So it's not a problem, it's an opportunity, but it's one that everyone needs to be aware of, because you have to understand all these different assets in order to start to optimize it. So what we always kind of say is that the first thing you want to do is make the page faster. And you can do that by looking for latency on the page and understanding where there are gaps and where there are resources that create real problems. You can either eliminate them, or you can go back to the sources of those and try and figure out what's going on, or you can find the conflicts and eliminate them. And that drives a much better user experience. And of course, if the page is loading faster, then ads can load faster and your viewability goes up, create more impressions. And so all of that is actually really great. And we spend a lot of time focused on that, using technology to address it. More importantly, I think this is sort of the idea of this talk, is that we've edged into a world where site owners don't have a lot of control over what happens on their site. And as new technology evolves to assess this, we're finding that we can start to bring them back to the site owner. So you're still going to have third parties, but suddenly you have the ability to monitor and measure and push back on them if they're creating problems for you. And so we're really advocating that if you own a site, you should start to take control back of the entire experience. And that's understanding your third party supply chain come all the way through. And then finally, where this takes you is if you know what's going on and you know how to balance it all, then you can start to think about your business outcomes. And so we have publisher customers who care a lot about speed first and foremost. We have publisher customers who care a lot about making sure the ads are as fast as possible. And there are different things you can do with resources and the page design to make sure that that's optimized. But first, you need to understand what's going on. So where we think this is going to go is that you'll really be able to set your business objectives and start to adjust it. So that's really it's kind of the high-level talk from us today. My colleague Jeff and I will both be here all day. We're happy to talk about how this plays out from a technology standpoint. Like I said, we use this to deal with ad blockers. We use this to accelerate ads. We do page speed as well. And now we're starting to look at how you can control that entire journey and make sure your critical ad path is optimized. So that's it for me.